Welcome to Pitmaster, an Old Virginia Smoke podcast. I'm your host, Luke Darnell. While you're enjoying this podcast, please share it out on your social media and also be sure to like the podcast on the service of your choice. It's the beginning of March and it feels like springtime. That means it's barbecue season, y'all. And I can think of no one better to lead us off into the season than the incomparable Ernest Servantes. Participant on BBQ Pit Wars, Chopped Grillmaster Champion, Chopped Judge, won more awards than almost anyone, and has one of the hottest barbecue restaurants in the world, the Burnt Bean Company. This guy has done it all. And he was just nominated for the James Beard Award as the best chef in Texas. So please join me in welcoming Ernest Servantes from the Burnt Bean Company. This podcast is brought to you by BBQData.com. BBQData.com is your one-stop shop for all of your barbecue competition data. Historical data, calls, wins, placements, everything under one roof. It's a great way not only to track yourself in the standings, but also to track how you improve your scores from year to year. Listeners of this podcast can receive 20% off of a new subscription to BBQData.com with the code PITPOD. That's one word, all capital letters, PITPOD, PITPOD. So check your team scores, check on others, and do it all on BBQData.com. All righty. We're here with an interview that I've been dying to do. We got Ernest Servantes, Burnt Bean Co. How you doing, bro?
I'm doing good. Thanks for inviting me. And it's been a long time coming, right?
Absolutely. Well, judging by your post, man, you're pretty busy cooking food for the masses down there at your restaurant. I mean, by all accounts, everything looks amazing. A good friend of mine growing up, I sent him down there about a month ago, and he said he's not had a barbecue experience like that. So that's great.
Right on. That's good to hear.
So I have to ask you, because you're the only person I know that's actually won Chopped and judged on Chopped. Which was more fun?
Yeah. Oh, well, of course, judging's a lot easier, man, because there's no pressure on you, you know? You just go in there, bust some balls, and then you're out. You know what I mean? It's a lot easier than, being on the chopping block, as they say.
I know, but it's been great to watch you go do all that stuff, and you've really put a good name out there for barbecue, and it's a lot of fun.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, man, it's been good to compete against you a couple times and share a couple meals with you guys. And first time I ever had beef cheeks, you and Freddie made them, and they were just amazing.
Yeah, try to bring that South Texas love to. Were we in Virginia, right?
Yeah.
Or were we in the Royal? Yeah.
No, we were in the Royal. Yeah, that was the first time, or maybe even Alabama down there, World Food.
Yeah, we did that too. Remember the first time we did it, we were in Smithfield, Virginia, and we did that Smithfield, the one with Sterling. He did that. What's it called?
The guinea pig
jig, or one of those where you get. Yeah, and we were like, we were out there. We were already 4 days into that trip, and we're like, dude, we missed our breakfast tacos, and we went to the Walmart and they had some beef cheek, and we got tortillas, and we fed the masses, and a lot of people were impressed, man.
Oh, I know, dude, and it's something that you guys, and I blame you and Fred mostly, but you guys just introduced so many of us to different things, like Darren beef cheeks, and all that stuff, carne guisada. That's something that I make all the time now. So it's that's
so
what
does Darren. He always calls me.
But that's what makes barbecue awesome, man, is learning from people that you meet from all around the country. It's a lot of fun.
Every place has their little specialty, and that's one of ours. Our carne guisada, our barbacoa, and other things too. I know Darren's asked me for a couple other recipes on other things, and and that's the cool thing about us as barbecue guys, is that we're willing to share anything that we can learn. Not necessarily has to do with competition, but like in just different kinds of cuisines that we're not used to making, that we've heard of, or we're really not strong at, but we have access to people that know that cuisine, and it really helps, and it makes everything go so good.
Right, and I think it makes us all better cooks, which is what we're all striving to do anyway.
Yeah, or better eaters, as I say. I've with Darren and them too, with that pork loin sandwich, that thing, I did that a couple of times here in town. And,
Yeah.
it's like that. And I remember when Darren was opening up that chicken joint, we talked about that flavor of that hot chicken. And, we went to Nashville and we did like a crawl on different kinds of hot chicken. And man, we were dying by the end of the trip, but it was worth it. But we learned a lot. So it's a lot of fun when you get a bunch of guys that like to eat food and appreciate good things in life and bourbon and things like that. And it makes it real enjoyable because, a couple of years ago, it's like I tell people, I'd say 10 years, maybe even a little bit sooner. We really didn't get out of our comfort zone, which was Texas. We always we always had friends like y'all. We were always Facebook friends and we knew acquaintances, and that's how we became friends. But we never really got to venture out and hang out with each other, other than if we wanted to once a year, which was the Royal. But we never got to that point, and I think we kind of closed the gap. And I told Fred that one time we called it the trilogy road trip, where we went to Virginia, then we went to the Royal, then we went to the Jack. And me being part of the Smithfield team, once I got part of that was Tuffy and all those guys and Darren, I really got to know those guys. And I think it really brought the bond closer. And, that was the times where, Sterling, because back in the day it was King of Smokers. That's where it was at. And a lot of people wanted to be part of that, but he would only invite, Jamie Greer and Johnny Trigg. And yeah, those guys are phenomenal legends. But they really didn't compete against us guys from IBCA and things like that. So we didn't really know them because those guys would always do KCBS. So I think we bridged the gap when it came to that with Smithfield really coming in with Emily and all the ladies out there, and we kind of got to become friends. And I guess I would call it the icebreaker was done, because it was just a matter of time where we really got to know each other. And once that happened, it really opened Pandora's box and we all became friends. And once we kind of got to know each other, we're like, yeah, these Texas boys are pretty cool. And, y'all boys over there are pretty cool. And we realized that there was a lot more in common that we had other than competition barbecue. And, and then the whole IBCA versus KCBS in Alabama, that was really cool too. And, the by then the bond was already done. And we were more hanging out than getting to know each other. And once you get to hang out, you can cut the shit. And, Darren and all those guys and you and so many. Wolf's Revenge, I remember, was out there too. And Hot Wet Chulas and all that. I got to know more of the South because when I was on that show, BBQ Pit Wars.
Yeah.
But other than that, I think that was what really brought us South Texas boys to get to really know y'all. And then the rest is history. And now we're all cool and we're all friends. And a lot of people don't realize that before then, the Texas guys never ventured out. We were happy where we were at. And I think me being on Pit Wars and all those shows, it kind of like told these guys, hey man, if Ernest can do it, we can do it too. And, you see Lee Hinkle out there now, and you see Lucky Charms out there and a couple other guys with Fred. And, you see them out there competing in different states, which is really cool. Because back in the day, 10 years, even 8 years ago, it was unheard of,
Right.
So,
I spent a lot of time with Lee Hickle last year. He was on his little East Coast rampage, and every time I'd be somewhere, he'd pop up in the middle of the night, and I'm like, oh man.
yeah,
We ended up like spending a lot of time together, and he's just such a great dude. Yeah.
Yeah, and it is, and it's really cool that we finally bridged that gap and everybody became close. And I think now, I don't ever think there was ever a time, you can ask the old school guys, that Texas really bonded with anybody outside of Texas, because at the end of the day, it was KCBS versus Texas. And back in the day, and we never had that bond because we never ventured out. And there was no need to, because the prize money was good. We didn't have to travel very far, and we had a lot of good competition. And now we were just kind of curious on going out there. And I told, Fred, whenever I was competing out there, I was like, man, we can compete with these guys. So, and that bridge gap was made, and the rest is history. And now we have a lot of fun. So it's not just a 1 year thing at the Royal, or if you get lucky and get your 7 and get a draw for the Jack, now when we go to the Jack, it's like a bigger family reunion, and we get stupid out there. And the same thing with the Royal. It's like you have the what is it, the egg rolls and the sandwiches, Daryl's. Darren's thing, and then you have Vanilla's hot dog thing, and now you have the South Texas carne asada with the rice and the beans and everything. And it's really cool that those traditions are made now, and it feels like we're part of us and y'all are part of us. So it's a win-win situation all around.
You just described why competition barbecue is so awesome,
Mm-hmm.
And everyone always talks about it, but that was a great take on it. One of the things I like to ask people is how did your career and life experiences outside of barbecue prepare you to be a pitmaster? Well, that's been your whole life pretty much, right? Is cooking.
Right. I've been on a lot of interviews and a lot of shows, and, the same question gets asked over and over, and is, if you weren't a cook or a chef, what would you do in your life? And I really don't know what I would do, because this is all I've ever done since I was like 17 years old. So, this is a form of life. It's a lifestyle, and it's one of those lifestyles. It's a lot of work, but this is all I know. So it doesn't really bother me compared to people that try to get into the restaurant industry, or especially try to get into the barbecue restaurant industry, which is a different animal. It's a lot of work, and they get, burnout, or they get fried, and they're like, well, I didn't think it was going to be that intense. And I'm like, yeah, that's just common sense. You know what I mean? So
it's hard work. It's hard work.
It is a lot of hard work, and especially if you want to make it, if you want to make it really good, you can hire, if you have money and you can hire people and you do it, and, you don't have to show up every day, it's fine. But if you really want to put your hands on everything like I do, to make sure, like how you said about your friend, to have an excellent experience, that's where, you have to put in the hours. You put in the 19, 20-hour days, and you do it back to back to back to back. And like today, yesterday's my only day off. Today we do sausage. Tomorrow where the pits are on, and they don't stop till Sunday. And that's the story of my life. And it's like, wow, is it worth it? I'm like, well, I've waited all my life for this opportunity, to own my own restaurant, much less barbecue. I wouldn't have never gotten into competition barbecue if I didn't want to, at the end of the rainbow, or at the, as they say, to open up my barbecue joint. That was my whole way, is I had to market myself and market my brand before I could even open a restaurant, due to the fact that I didn't have the income or the funds. So it was 13 years in the making, and now I have it, and I did not take it for granted. And just as much as, you especially, you're a competition cook and one of the best in the country, you're not going to go out there and just not necessarily hang out, but you're there to win. Let's keep it real. Everybody's there to win. Everybody's there to kick each other's ass. Yeah, we'll help each other out, and yeah, we're having fun. But between those certain hours of the morning till 3:00, you're my mortal enemy, and I'm there to win. And at the end of the day, it's not only there for the fame, but it's there for the respect, and it's there to challenge yourself to be the best cook there was at that certain cook-off, or that certain tournament. And that's the same philosophy that I brought from competition barbecue to the restaurant industry, is that when I opened up, I wasn't going to be like, oh, his place is okay. I wanted to be the best in Texas, much less the country. And that's my goal. And that was right off the bat. I was not going to go, I was kicking that fucking door down. You know what I mean? It was one of those type of things.
Absolutely. And as somebody who's recently transitioned into the barbecue business from my full-time gig, the hours that you put in,
mm-hmm.
It doesn't get easier. It's, especially if you care. I mean, everybody knows how much you care about the food, and I use that as inspiration, because I know when I half-assed it and I put out food out there that they say is great, but I know it's not the best that I can do, and so I try not to do that, because I don't do it anywhere else. So why should I do it there?
Exactly. And what makes it different is, in competition barbecue, in reality, you're going to have your off days, and your off days is because, you only chose one brisket, and, they might've had a huge gash, or just didn't have that pop, or you got ribs, or, whatever it could be. In the restaurant industry, I tell people, when you have 50 briskets on and 40 something slabs of ribs and all this other kind of food, you have to make sure every single one is perfect, because people are traveling, especially now we have a reputation of having some of the best barbecue in Texas. People have high standards when they're going in, and they're going to go and butcher you if it's not on. And people don't realize that pressure that's there. But if you have that standard, if you have that, if you train your team that this is our standard, there's no pressure. It's just another day at the job. And that's why I have a team. My team is very, very talented. It's because they know my standard and they know that anything less is not acceptable. So we're not going to have an off day. The only days we have off days is if it's snowing outside like last week or sleet. Other than that, we bring our standard every single day. Some briskets are challenging than others, but I know every brisket that I choose. So, that's the deal with that, man. And you have to have that high standard if you want to be the best.
Right. And it's that kind of, man, it sounded like me talking to Kim before a competition. Like, hey, that's not acceptable. Like,
it's not.
It's not acceptable.
And I've seen my team knows, and I think that has a lot to do with not only are my standards in barbecue, but me being an executive chef, and that was my standards. And people, and I tell my team, don't ever get offended of anything I tell you. I'm not going to do it just to be an asshole. I do it because I expect the best out of you. I'm going to bring the best out of my team. And when you have high standards like that, they get to be proud of the food they're getting. And when they get complimented, let's just say, oh my God, the sides were amazing. I point to the lady that made them or the guy that made them, and they take pride like, yeah, well, actually I'm getting complimented too. Or I get write-ups and they're saying the great customer service, and I read it to my team and I was like, that has nothing to do with me. It has nothing to do with you and you and you. And I never take credit where credit's not due. If someone comes in their compliments, I'm like, hey, it's, Stephanie, or hey, it's Chris, or it's Anthony or something. I never take it. So they understand that, hey, we're a family and you get it just as much as me. I'm not going to take every credit for everything and leave y'all out. And they get excited because now they try harder because they know that they're part of something special.
Right. And that's super important. You have to have buy-in from your people.
Yeah, they have to drink the Kool-Aid, as I say.
Right, because it's a reflection of you.
Exactly.
Yep. Let's go back in time a little bit to your competition days. What do you think what was the moment that really, where you turned from like a really good pitmaster to a championship pitmaster? What was that turning point?
Man, I don't know. I always had, I always set goals. In life, I always set goals. And my first goal when I started this whole barbecue industry, competition life, it was first with me and a bunch of drinking buddies. It was like 6 cooks on our team, and we were there. I think we had more beer than food, and we partied. And I remember when I won first place right off the bat, and everybody else was excited. It was cool. But then the second time we did a cook-off, everybody got drunk, and everybody didn't, the brisket was put on late. The ribs, were okay, and I didn't like that. And I hate to lose. And I realized that the only way I'm going to get really good at this competition shit is to be a one-man team or with my wife, and I had a couple of friends that would do like auxiliaries whenever we would have them. But other than that, because then I would know that no one else is to blame except myself. So when I knew that, I was like, all right. So I set standards. I wanted to be the best in New Braunfels, and then the best in the county, and then the Tri-County, which had a bunch of big cook-offs. And then South Texas, Central Texas, and all of Texas. And then after I hit that, I want to be known in the country as like, okay, I know that guy, Burnt Bean guy. And that's what my goals is when you set goals and you start winning and, you want to have that reputation that they're like, oh shit, he's rolling up. When they roll up and they're like, oh hell, he's here. And It got to the point where I knew I became successful in Texas is when I used to say it on Facebook, hey, I'm down and bound going to, Amarillo, or I'm down and bound and next stop Dallas. And it got to the point where the promoters were telling me, dude, can you not post where you're going because people are dropping out at the last moment because they hear that you're coming. And I was like,
really?
that felt really good when the promoters are like, just show up. Don't tell anybody where you're going. And because they would go like, okay, Ernest is going to Dallas. I'm just saying big cities because you don't know that many small ones here. Okay, Ernest is going to Dallas. We're going to Houston. You know what I mean? Because there was more cook-off options. They knew that if I was going to go in there, I was a ringer, and they wanted, they're not going to, unless it's a really big one, they would not go. And that was a really cool thing when people would get pissed that she showed up. Or then
I've only had it happen a couple times, but it is kind of fun.
Yeah, and that's where I knew that we were getting better. I always tell people I think the success of me being in competition barbecue would have been better if I didn't have a real job. I always say that statistically, and I know a lot of people are going to give me flack because I've never said this until the first time here. And I don't know if you can agree with me or not, but I always believe that the greatest and the most successful competition cooks in barbecue were always self-employed. And I think the reason why is, one, they had the funds, but two, they had the option to go to every cook-off they could without worrying about a job.
Right. I agree with you.
And that's the one thing that hindered me, is that I was an executive chef working 80 hours, and then I just hurry up and get my rig and take off. And sometimes I would have to put the meat back in the freezer because something happened to catering or something, so I couldn't be as consistent as I wanted to cook. Cooking 35 to 40 cooks a year, it went down to 15. And, when I did go, I was still successful. I always said that if I was in my own job or my own boss, I think I would have been really, really dominating in the industry of barbecue if I had that opportunity, but I didn't because I had a real job. The ones that are self-employed are the ones that are the most successful because they can go in week in and week out and go in and travel wherever they want without not worrying about anything.
Right, and if you can plan your work life right, especially if you have your own company, then you don't have all that extraneous shit in your brain. Like, exactly. Oh, I got to check in now and do this and all that. And I've found that that's been a huge change in my cooking. Right. Huge change.
Yeah, and it's the difference between, and I always say that, the difference between the normal competition cook and a professional competition cook is the ones that are professional, when they do it every week and stay consistent on their product, than a guy that did it once a month that they kind of forgot what they did. So it's always fresh on their mind, and understanding the textures and the cook times and everything. So, I always said that. I said if I could ever go back, which I really don't have any urge to go back to competition, but I don't know, 5-6 years down the line, if the burnt being successful that I can get away, I might go and do a run and finally be my own boss and be like, fuck this, I'm going to do it every weekend and see what happens. It's funny because, at the height of my barbecue competition, I had 3 years in a row that I hit 6, and I never got that 7. And there was one that got 7, and I thought I got it in, and then they said there was only, it had to be 50, right? I think it was like 48, or it was something stupid, like one of them didn't turn into chicken.
Right.
So it wasn't, I'm like, come on. So I got shafted 3 years in a row, and I thought, well, I have 6 in the bung, in the draw. But then I realized how many are in Texas, 200 cooks, and I never win any draws. So I never got to go and have the opportunity to represent burnt bean out there. So, it is what it is, but one year maybe I'll go do it. One year or not. Right now I have no desire to do any more competitions. I'll go hang out. I might do one a year because the San Antonio Rodeo sounds a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But other than that, my focus is on different things.
See, you stole one of my Ernest questions about competing again.
Yeah. Yeah. I always tell people, like, right now I have, I guess, Fred and Carlo and all those guys that I hang out with. They do so many competitions, and we are on this big group chat that I just live my urges off of them, and they tell me how they did and all that good stuff and how it went and who won. And then I follow so many people, and it's like, okay, cool. So I get my little kick out of that, doing that. But right now I have no urge. I think my focus is on trying to be the best in Texas in barbecue and competition, since I already did it in, competition, that I want to do it on this, and I want to be one of some of the few. I really look up to people like Travis that went and did that, and he was so successful in competition, but then yet he comes around and opens a restaurant and he fucking destroys it. And he does, so he's so successful at his restaurant, and it makes me so proud that there's so many guys out there that did that transition, because it is hard, from going from one spectrum to the other, and it's not even the same. And people don't realize that there's nothing similar from competition to regular barbecue. And I really look up to people like Travis Clark, and there's other guys out there that have, Darren, he's another guy that has a successful barbecue restaurant, as well as was very successful in the competition world. And I look up to those guys a lot because I want to be one of the few in Texas that does that too.
Well, if you're not already there, my friend, you're very close.
Yes, sir. I'm trying.
Very close. So when you were competing, did you have any habits or rituals or superstitions that you had?
Oh, man. I guess we have time. Yeah, I have a lot of them, and I'll tell you right off the bat. The one thing, and you'll probably notice this, but the moment you start becoming more successful in competition, the more and more you all of a sudden have friends that want to come and visit you right conveniently when you're prepping or when you're cutting.
Right.
And I noticed that, I ended up getting my first trailer and people would just open the door. And I was like, what the hell? And then you don't want to be rude. And you have all your shit laying right there. And they're just like, really like literally taking photographic memories in their head. Like, okay, he had this, or he had Cosmos, or he had, this injection, or he's using this kind of meat. And you're like, so what I end up doing, you can ask anybody in Texas how I prep. I prep in my underwear. I literally prep, no shirt, nothing else, just my underwear and flip flops. And the reason why it was a shock value, because they would open the door surprisingly, I'm like, hey, what's up, man? They're like, whoa. I'm like, what's going on, man? Come on in. They're like, no, that's cool. And they would freak out. And I would be known for, like, don't go into Ernie's place unless he's done prepping. He'll put his clothes back on. I would literally prep butt naked other than my underwear. And I have no shame. And it's like it's funny because the only people that were used to it was like Fred or Carlo. I think sometimes Roddy, but everybody knew on Friday, don't go when Ernie, unloads. If Ernie hasn't come out, he's prepping and he's probably naked. So they would leave me alone. And that was the only way for these guys to stop shaking on me is to prep literally buck naked. And my tradition was I would eat Hot Pockets every night and ramen. That was the whole deal with me, is that I would take it and put it in my microwave in the pit trailer, and that was my tradition, and that was it. But yeah, my thing everybody knew me for was I would prep in my underwear. That's it.
I doubt that kept Roddy out of the trailer.
Yeah. Those guys kind of liked it. But yeah, it was funny because people would go in there, or even news people that were in the area that wanted an article. They would just walk in, and back in the day, I'm like, dude, I got to prep and I got to get a lot of shit done. And y'all are really keeping me behind. Once I got my underwear, I noticed that I was left alone.
That's amazing. That's exactly why this podcast exists, for stories like that.
Yeah, man. I have some crazy stories. And then there's other stories that I used to walk out in the my underwear, going to the porta potties and be like, dude, is he in his fucking underwear? I'd be like just waving, and they're like, dude, that's only Ernie would do that shit. I did it at the Royal. I did it everywhere.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Let's talk people real quick before we get to the final questions on this. Who's impacted your life the most in competition barbecue?
Man, I'll tell you one thing, Luke, is that when I came up in competition barbecue, there wasn't anybody to look up to, because it was always cliques. In Texas, you were in cliques, and there was like the old school guys and then the new school guys, and the new school guys had no fucking clue what they were doing. And the old school guys, unless you won a lot, they would bring you. It's kind of like the cool table at the lunchroom. They would invite you in their cool part unless they knew who you were. And it was like, people like Craig Sherry and the Canterburys and Ronnie Wade and all them. Great people. But when I started, they would shun you, like, go away, shoe fly. So I didn't. And when I started, there was no competition classes. There wasn't. There was one a couple of years later called the Johnny Trigg. Was it called Johnny Trigg and Pellet Envy? Remember when Pellet Envy and Johnny Trigg was doing that run?
Yep, Rod Gray, yeah.
Yeah, Rod Gray. I know, but they used to have a name for it.
Gosh, we were talking about this the other day. I can't remember the name of it.
When they started coming out with that cooking class, everybody was taking it. That was when everybody started using the blue bottle and the tiger sauce and all the stuff that Johnny Trigg used. But growing up, growing in this industry, there was no one to look up to, for me, of course, and there was nothing other than internet, and there wasn't even that many internet groups. So much less, in KCBS, y'all can go from different states and understand the process. IBCA was a different animal. It was like what you knew. And so I did a lot of research and bought so many books and on the internet, just, practicing and crash and burns and finding some aha moments. But I really didn't have anybody that I looked up to. You wanted to be like a Ronnie Wade that would win everywhere he went. But as the more and more I did it, the better and better I got, the more and more of a reputation I got as like, who's this guy? And people started respecting me. And that's where it was cool. But back in the day, there was no classes, man. Everybody nowadays shaves anybody that's been successful now in IBCA or in KCBS shaves a good 2 to 3 years taking classes. Because there was a lot of aha moments back in the day, and like, oh, I didn't think about that, or oh, and things like that. So back in the day, there was nothing like that. That these guys go in these classes and they get those aha moments from them, and they pay someone to do it, and they shave 2 to 3 years off, and they become more successful quicker. Not when I was doing it. Back in the day, it was nobody. Right. And I don't want to sound arrogant, but I really didn't look up to anybody because there was really no one up to look up to. Other than, I think, 3 or 4 years later, once I started cooking, it's when that show Pit Masters came out. Yep. And it had Harry Sue, and it had Tuffy and Myron and Johnny Trigg and Melissa Cookston and that other chick from the Chicks or whatever it was called. And
Leanne Whippen.
Leanne Whippen. And that's when you're like, whoa, you start looking up to, and that's when you have the DVR, you're stopping and, rewinding in slow-mo to see what they're using. Am I right? And if you say you didn't, if you were into it, you're lying, because everybody would literally copy to see what they had. And you would die to know what was in Tuffy's beef injection and things like that. And why was it so thick? And you're like, why would, just different things. But until then, there wasn't really anybody that we looked up to. It was just you tried your best and you learned from what you did, and then you moved on. You would probably go judge a couple of contests just to see the flavor profile, but there wasn't really anybody, brother. I can't believe I'm like 42, and I finished competing when I was 40, and I started in my 20s, and I can't believe I'm old school. That's crazy. When I was in into my 30s, I was old school, and that's kind of scary. But
But no, so was it the same in Texas? Like, you mentioned the old guard and how they kind of standoffish with the new people a little bit. It's like that out here too, until you won. Once you won a contest, then they were like, oh, hey.
Yeah. Oh, come on in. Come and sit with us. And that's when I knew. Here's a couple of things about me, Luke, that I don't know if you know about me, but I always said if the good Lord blessed me with a talent, I would pay it forward. And any guy, when I became successful at the height of my cooking career, any guys that were new, that wanted to learn, or they felt like they were an outcast because no one wanted to bring them in because they were kind of shy, I would welcome it. And that's why everybody's like, man, aren't you so cool? He'll help you. As I always said, if I get to that point, I'm going to help everybody, because when I started, it sucked being the loner, and it sucked that no one would want to help me. And and these guys would really try. And I would go and help them, or they come and ask me questions and I'd help them, or they bring me food. I'd be like, all right, it's too salty, or, hey, it's a little too tough, or they're like, dude, now I see these guys that are real successful that I helped them when they started. And they're like, dude, it's because of you that we got to this level. And it's because of you that, you welcome me in, and you heard, I know I called you 40 times and I know you're probably tired of it, but you answered my questions and you did everything. And I always said that I wanted to be someone that people could look up to and say, hey, man, it's because of you that inspired me to cook harder, or you really helped me in my barbecue career, because when I did it, no one was there for me. So I always said, if I became successful with the Lord's grace, that I would pay it forward and help other people too. And I've done that. And, I've helped people get on Chopped as well, because at the end of the day, I can tell you exactly what I'm going to use, but you're going to put your own spin on it. Right. So, that's what I always did. And that's what it should be. That's what barbecue should be, is paying it forward and helping anybody out. And that's what I do. And I still do it. And people are like calling me. I'm like, dude, I haven't been in the game for 3 years. And people are still asking for advice. I'm like, how long do you cook your briskets to, or whatever? And it's like, man, I don't remember those kind of things. But, I'm always willing to help people out. And I've always been that kind of guy I never was that kind of guy that's like, I'm not going to tell you my secrets. That's, I could care less, and that was one of my things, is that I never asked for help, and that was maybe my fault, but I was always willing to help.
And that's awesome, man. I think about the people that I've helped over the years, and when they tell you that just kind of validates why we do what we do.
Yeah. And it does, because at the end of the day, Luke, yes, we all put our footprint in the sand when it comes to the barbecue, and people will remember you in Old Virginia, and people will always remember Burnt Bean. And but at the same time, it doesn't matter how good of a cook we were. It was more of how kind of a person he was than anything else. And they'll remember you more as a person than your cook that you cooked one time in some town in Virginia and you got first place perfect score of 180 chicken. No one's going to remember that shit, but they're going to remember how you treated people.
Right.
And that's the way it should be. And hell, you invited me to be on your podcast, and I haven't been in the industry in a long time, but it tickles me pink that you're still inviting me to be on your show, which is I'm honored.
Oh, it's an honor to have you on here. As you mentioned, you're OG, man.
Yeah, I am. I can't believe I'm OG, but I'm literally OG, man.
You're 3 years younger than me, and I consider you OG.
Yeah, man. Yeah, that's crazy, right? So you're 39, 40, and you're an OG. I'm like, yeah, that's what they tell me. So,
all right. Well, I have some rapid fire questions. These are the last ones. They're fun, but there is one more that I got to ask because I don't know the answer to it.
Okay.
But I know that it's a touchy subject.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me the legend of the Brisket hat.
The Brisket cartel hat?
Yeah.
This one right here?
Yep.
So, there's a guy named Hondo Hernandez in California, and he's the guy that made all my shirts. And one day he's like, dude, you should come up with like a group of the baddest, because at the time I was one of the best brisket cookers in Texas. And he's like, dude, you should probably come up with this fucking group that just has the best barbecue brisket cookers in the world. And I'm like, all right, cool. And he's like, all right, what are we going to call it? And I'm like, he had an idea, and he did the old school, old English on it. But if you look at our brisket cartel thing, it was, it's the lettering's different. He kind of changed it up. But then we called it the Brisket Cartel, and we wanted the best in the industry and in the competition world. It didn't matter how good of a competition cook you were or how good of a chicken cooker. You had to be a bad motherfucker when it came to brisket. And the two criterias is one, you had to be a self-made, and the other one is you had to be a consistently good brisket cooker. You know, it didn't matter if you were number one in ribs or the cooker of the year, but you had to be good. And then you had to be, once we got our initial group, just like any kind of other cartel thing, it was silly at the time, is that you had to be unanimously voted. You know, it wasn't just me. It had to be, everybody had to vote you, and it had a lot to do with your character. It had a lot to do with of who you were cooking with or what kind of restaurant you had. And that's why we have like 22 members, and we're still growing. It's some of the baddest dudes in the industry. And it got to the point where it was so much of an elite group, but at the same time, so hard to get into that everybody wanted it. And a lot of people would even, carbon copy our caps and say they're part of it because they knew that it was like, well, it's just a brisket cap. I'm like, well, if it's so much, then why did you go and make your own? Because you wanted to be part of the group. And then there's a lot of people that give me shit from KCBS or IBCA. They're like, dude, why don't you put me in? I'm like, and Robert Lerma said it best. He's like, if you're asking, you're not ready. And,
right.
I show up to barbecue joints and I'll have a cap with me and I'll leave it there. And the guy starts crying because he knows that, it's an elite group and we're still growing, but it's about the quality, not the quantity. We're not going to just give every dude a cap, and some people like Blaine always gives me shit. He's like, dude, I've won this and I've won that. I'm like, I know, bro, but you have to be unanimously, there's so many, Garen's in the group and there's a lot of other cats in the group too, but it's an elite group that, even though we're, in the industry, and the restaurants too, it's one of those type of things that anybody that wears this hat knows what's up. And you got to admit, when you see it, they're like, you got one, if you got one, you got the respect. And it's kind of like, like the Hells Angels or something, it's one of those elite groups. And people might say it's funny. And I get a lot of people like, well, that's just a dumb group, but I want to be in it. I'm like, you see, that's what I'm saying. And then,
right.
And then I've gotten some people like, I know, I'm not going to say any names, but there's just one guy that the restaurant that he owns is one of the most prolific restaurants in the industry, but it wasn't him that made it that way. It was his father. You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
You have to be self-made. It's not like it was given to you. That was given to you. Even though you're doing a great job, we're not going to let you in the club because your dad's the one that did it, not you. I give your dad one, but
right.
not you. You know what I mean? So it's one of those type of things. But, the Brisket Cartel's strong. And, when you're in it too, there's a lot of perks to it too. And not only that, we all help each other out. And a lot of people don't know that. It's like this little fraternity that if you need help with your brisket or your shit's off, someone's going to help you and they get stronger,
It's My favorite thing to do is to be walking through a competition and see a guy, and I'm like, nope, you didn't get that. You had that made.
There's this one in your area. It's not my boy Wolf Street, and there's another cat. And I've called him out so many times, like, dude, stop trying to be part of something you're not. And he's like, well, I might make I'm like, dude, I don't care, but it's so silly, and you look silly because we all know you're not part of it, you know?
Right. It's hilarious.
Yeah, man, and it's like these people, and it's like they don't think it's a big deal, but they want to be part of the club. And we got a lot of cool things coming around too. We got some really cool jackets that we're giving the members, and new type of swag that we're going to serve. But it's a really cool group. Man.
The only reason I brought it up is because last time at the Royal, I saw a couple, and I'm like, "There's no chance. Come on, like, what's going on?" It's funny.
There's some posers.
Yeah. Cool, man. Well, I'm not going to take up too much more of your time, but I'm going to hit you with these 4 questions, all right?
Okay.
What do you see about barbecue on social media that upsets or bothers you?
Squeezing of briskets.
It's the worst.
It's the worst, man. It's like we all know that they're between the flat and the point. They're just pocket of juice. Stop squeezing it or things like that. And then, the old school guys. Texas is there's so many Facebook groups in Texas that those old school guys they're so dumb, but you just leave them alone, But yeah, squeezing briskets drives me nuts.
That's
squeeze.
Amazing.
What is it? Squeeze Charmin, not briskets, man.
Exactly. So you already mentioned that your favorite, you like Hot Pockets and ramen. Do you have a post-competition meal that you like?
I do. Chinese food. If I win Grand Champion, it's Chinese food. I love Chinese food at the end, or pizza.
Nice.
If I don't win, I eat whatever's at home, or I eat the leftovers.
Do you have a favorite present that you like to give to people?
A favorite present?
Yeah.
Like what?
I don't know, like a book or a hat or.
Oh! I usually give them stickers or shirts.
Yeah.
I also, if you're really close to me, I love to give knives.
That's one of my favorite gifts.
Yeah, I like to give knives, like quality knives. Like when we went to Arkansas, I gifted Fred with a $350 shun knife, and Roddy one too. I've given knives to a lot of guys that either I see, I always go to their place and I see if they're not good yet or they have struggle and it's because of a knife. I go the next time and I gift them the knife that they need to get better at what they're doing. Either it's from trimming or to when they're cutting or when they're doing their plate presentation. I see what they need and I gift them to that stuff. So knives is another big one. If I really respect you, I give you knives.
That's awesome. I give men underwear, so that's
nice.
Weird.
Nice.
Yeah. All right, last question, dude. If you could have a gigantic billboard anywhere with anything on it, getting a message out to millions, what would it say and why?
Oh man. I guess my thing would be, I guess on any kind of interstate, it would be like, things simple like this. Believe in your dreams because they do come true. Look at me.
That's awesome, dude.
Yeah,
that's
man.
Awesome. Well, Ernest, I want to thank you so much for taking time, bud.
Oh, no problem. Sorry about the other day. I was too busy playing golf.
That's all right.
I was like, you got to tell me because I'll forget, man.
Hey, I'm coming down probably next winter. You're going to have to save a tee time for me.
Oh, I'm all about it.
I may not be able to beat you in Brisket, but I'll get that ass on the golf course.
Oh, bring some money. That's all I got to say.
All right, man. Thanks a lot.
All right, brother. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Pitmaster, an Old Virginia Smoke podcast. Be sure to subscribe and like the podcast, rate the podcast, and to share it out with your friends. Also, be sure to check out the Old Virginia Smoke TikTok as well. Old Virginia Smoke, one word. That's all you have to search for. It's hilarious. Tune in next week for another great episode of Pitmaster. For companies interested in advertising, please contact Old Virginia Smoke directly via www.oldvirginiasmoke.com. Pitmaster, an Old Virginia Smoke podcast, is edited by Chris Sedanka. Pitmaster, an Old Virginia Smoke podcast, is a property of Old Virginia Smoke LLC. All rights reserved. Copyright 2022.